All right, this is a fun one. No? All right, so the benefits of playing um, JV lacrosse. Okay, uh, even if your goalie is should be playing elsewhere, right? So I was doing a coaching call with one of my goalies just the other day, and this topic came up, and I thought it would be beneficial for everybody. Um, Piper in the pipes. I see your question there on Instagram. I will get to it in a second. Okay. Um, Piper in the pipes. I have a. If you go on YouTube and or go on lacrossegoaluniversity.com and search for um, um, how to regain confidence in a goalie who has lost it. That's going to help you, but I'll try to cover that later. Um, so, so the idea in this section, the benefits of playing JV lacrosse when you can play varsity. Uh, so if your goalie is there's two uh, there's like 1,000 things in my head that I want you to understand here. Okay, the primary thing being is that I want when I coach a goalie, I want you to be good when it matters. And for a lot of young, and what I mean by that, that's usually like recruiting age, right? The recruiting window age. Um, and the idea is like, I don't need you good now. Well, I would like you to be good now, but if I'm a coach for you, I don't want you to be good now. Like I want to develop you. I want you to improve and I want you to deal with things and learn and then evolve because um I use the example of and I wrote about this in my book, but the idea of like if you take two people and you one has to hike to the top of a mountain and the other one has to one other one gets to take a helicopter to the top. And they both get to the top, but then a storm hits and they both get knocked down the mountain a little bit. Who do you think is gonna make it back up to the top? Well, you might say like, "Well, they'll both make it." Well, maybe, but the guy who did all the steps and knows where all the rocks are, and because he already walked through 'em, he will get up there. The other guy that took the helicopter up might decide like, "Oh, man, this is a lot of work. I don't wanna do this now. Like, I don't wanna work with this." It's too hard for me. I'm just gonna head back down. So I'm always for the goalie that has to kind of spend a little bit more time developing, moving up. Okay, so we want to make you good for when it matters. As much as I would love for you to be phenomenal now, from a developmental standpoint, we're really planning for the future. Okay. The other thing that I want to okay, I'll say this. I'll save this topic for a second, but there's really two mindsets here. As I was thinking about it, there's two mindsets to break this down. One is the competitive mindset versus the status mindset. Okay. And so in the competitive mindset, the goalie is like, I'm the best goalie here. I should be playing. I don't care if you're older than me, or you've been around longer than me, or you're part of this club before me, or whatever. I should be playing. Like I should be the starter. I should be the one. And so I get that because it's like It's like no, like I'm a winner. I'm a champ. I want to fight this thing. I'm going to do this. So I totally get that. The other side of it is there's a status mindset. Now, what's really interesting here is the status mindset can be part of the goalie, but it can also be part of the parents. Okay. And so the idea so the on the goalie's side, they may just think that they're like above playing on the JV, right? Or they're varsity material because they play on like 12 travel teams. Or the parents can think that they like the varsity parents better than the JV parents. I've seen this happen. It's kind of weird. Um, but the idea is like with a competitive approach, you want to win, you want to prove that you're the best. I totally get it. And with the status approach, it's like I'm so above all of these people who are on this team. It's going to affect my recruiting, all this stuff, and it's just not true. Okay, it's just not true. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the problem with travel teams, and not a problem. I don't want to say that like it's a problem, but for those of you guys that are kind of my age demographic, and maybe you played lacrosse when you were younger, you'll remember like high school lacrosse was like the thing, you know, and over the years, basically what travel teams do is they pull. Uh, you're taking the cream of the crap, right? You're taking the cream off of every team around and you're putting them on a big team and you're giving them like great helmets and great jerseys and some bags and some hoodies and stickers for the car and the whole thing and maybe some custom shafts, who knows. But the idea is you're taking the cream of the crap and putting them on a team, and then when your goalie goes back to high school or elementary school or whatever, that's the crap. Okay. And so what I so everyone else is crap. Like the travel team people are like, the serious ones and the better ones. And it's true. Like you're gonna get around better kids, you're gonna get around, typically a more achieving audience. Not always, but most of the time, you're gonna get around a bunch of kids that want to do well, want to play better. And when you go back to school, you may be around some kids where like they have to pick a sport, and that didn't used to be a problem, right? That didn't used to be a problem. And so I'm like in this way, I guess I'm a little bit of an old school coach. I respect the high school experience. I don't say that it's like the be all and end all because that's just wrong. That's changed. Right. And that's sad for a lot of people. And I get that. But the idea is that when you go back to that team, and so now maybe age wise, you play on a travel team. So you're used to a better level of lacrosse, and now you feel like you're going to be wasting your time playing on the JV. And I'm here to tell you that is not the case because you can, and you should make the best out of every team you play on, regardless of skill level around you. Okay, and I want to explain that a little bit. Okay, um, you know, I believe that your job as an athlete and our job as coaches helping an athlete, and goalies can kind of get left out of this a little bit, but your job is to make the team better. And many people forget the fact that you are there to play, to execute your individual skills to the best of your ability in a team environment. That's it. That's what this recipe is all about. Okay, that's it. And so when you go back, it's not like, okay, when you go to a travel team, and I say this all the time, you're paying for a service, you're paying for improvement, you're paying for coaching, you're paying to get to your kid to the next level, whatever that is. But when you go back to high school, it's a little bit not like that, right? It's like, okay, Karen from physics, the physics teacher, she's coaching the girls team, and then Mr. Smith, he's playing, he's volunteering his time and he's coaching the JV, and he's a good dude, but he doesn't know much about lacrosse or he hasn't played since the 60s, whatever. The idea though it's different, but you are coming to that to help that team grow. And as a goalie, there's a lot of things you can learn in that type of environment. That's really important to me. Okay. Um, so I believe that playing with players who are out there just to play, right, and they're not super motivated, it's as a young athlete, you almost develop some coaching skills, right? And we always talk about how the goalie is like the quarterback of the field and they're like another coach in the field. Well, that's kind of where it starts, right? So if you're like JV age, but you want to play with a varsity just because there's better kids and they can catch the throw, you're missing all that. And that really develops some, these are the things where coaches, when they look to kids and they're looking for other reasons to require to recruit them. Sorry, the idea is that they're looking they like let's say they got two goalies, right, and it's hard to pick between one or the other. They're looking for the intangibles, and one of the intangibles is like, well, how do you play with teammates, right? And how do can are you someone who brings people up? And they talk about this in professional sports even. You know, I just did a video today for my other YouTube channel about John Lester, who won 2 World Series with the Red Sox, and he won 1 with the Chicago Cubs. And one of the reasons why everybody liked him, I mean, it's like 16 years in Major League Baseball, was like he was a guy that brought everybody together in the clubhouse. Now, a lot of goalies kind of act even if they're not very introverted, they kind of act that way. They're in the cage. Although I got one in Ohio right now who's nowhere near introverted. But the idea is like you're going to develop that part of the skills. Like, hey man, I know you can't catch and throw, but I'm just going to try to give you a pass that you can catch. Well, that's a skill, right? That takes some dexterity, that takes some handwork, that takes some better pocket in your stick, all that sort of things. And that's something that you don't get that experience otherwise, right? So if you've done the work and you're good enough to be like a varsity level goalie, but you're going to be playing on JV, hey, there's so many benefits to this that you probably haven't thought of, right? And that's one of them. Okay, is dealing with kids like that maybe aren't so skilled, but you can learn to have kind of fun in that way. Um, Rob Milky writes, this was a hard one for us with our daughter. Her high school freshman year, the team had a senior, junior, and her as goalies. The coach told her she was more skilled than the other two, but wanted her on JV to see more shots and improve that much more. It also made her step up and coach, there you go, the newer players during the game to try to help them get better. By her senior year, on the state stats sheet, she had more shots on goal and saves than the next 3 goalies on the list combined. Was coaching youth teams, and now, and now, and now, and now, where's the rest of your comment? And now, okay. Oh, I'm going over to Facebook. And now she's playing D1. There you go. The seeing more shots did make her have to mentally and physically excel to compete. Yeah. Um, you know, Especially in the girls' game because shots are close anyway. Like you're gonna see more of it. It's like, okay, why not? Now, one thing I wanted to talk about, because I say this a lot, I say like the best team that you can be on is the worst team that you can be on. And just to kind of give that a little bit of a caveat is that that's true up until you get to those ages where you're ready to kind of get out and get in the world and be seen. Now, uh, back when like lacrosse recruiting went like completely nuts and colleges were recruiting 7th graders, there was a story that came out of, I think it was Maryland or Long Island, where uh, 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 I can't remember the program, but super deep at face off, like super deep at Fogos, and a kid on the JV who had never played varsity got recruited. Now I can't remember how old that kid was. He could have been a sophomore, but he got recruited to play Division One lacrosse and it never stepped on the field varsity. Now, I have not heard that happen for goalies, but it doesn't make any sense to me that it couldn't happen. Okay, depending on the depth of your program, playing JV in that situation, whatever, you're still good news. But you're most likely going to be kind of making the rounds. Uh, and I'm not saying this because the job here is not to get seen, right? Being seen is a byproduct of being good, right? Don't chase the get seen. Oh, I've got to be on this team or this tournament, because I just did a video for Lacrosse Goal University where I picked apart like this kind of national caliber game final of girls lacrosse, and I was like, the goalies playing in the final were not good. They were not good. And these are 2 of like the best teams I'm like that so you can't play that game. Okay, you can't play that game. Rob Milky, that's a great comment. Thank you. Um, so you've got to understand. So does playing on a good team help? Yes, in some ways, but you miss out. And I've seen some pretty crappy goalies play on those better teams. But the idea, and like to the interview I did with Brendan Cullen in December, for his daughter Emmy, it was kind of like, okay, they played on the B teams for a while, and then when they kind of had the opening and it was kind of time, then they made that leap up to the A squad travel wise. But in high school, you have some time to breathe and you have some time to play. And depending on where you are in the country, it can still be super competitive and super important to play. But for many goalies, it's a little bit of a break, right? And it's fun, and it's a place where they can actually win, like learn how to win. And that's one of my comments here is like you're when it comes to athlete development, okay? I've seen this happen a lot in Olympic sports where young athletes get thrust up to compete, whether because they're talented and they make the national team. It's like, okay, here you go. But then what happens is they go up and they don't necessarily win. They they finish wherever and they get frustrated and they beat themselves up and then they beat them some of them beat themselves out of the sport. There's this thing about learning how to win. And as goalies, we have some opportunities where we can grade every single save we make, right? You can make a save and make it super smooth and super clean, and like, oh man, that was A plus. Like, wow, it didn't even flinch. Good stuff. And then you can have other saves you made where you're like, okay, well, I got a piece of it, but I'm going to give myself like a C. So you can pick apart goalie stats as much as you want, and it's a fine balance depending on the goalie as to what you're trying to do. But the idea here is that if you have the skills and ability to play up, but you play down, ideally you're going to be in a situation where you're going to have a chance to win. And I don't just mean win like you won the game, but have success as a goalie, making saves, making outlet passes. Sure, you may make an outlet pass and it may be so good that the girl who was on the other end of it didn't have to move her stick, but she still dropped it. And you're going to develop the ability to walk away and go, hey, I did my part. I made the best pass possible because I knew for that player, I had to make the best pass possible. Well, it's a good skill set to have. It's a good mindset to have, right? It's really important to kind of keep that in mind, even at the D1 level, right? Um, y- you know, I wanted to finish just talking about that communication piece, okay? Because it's one thing to be competitive, and years ago when I had my strength and conditioning business, and for my Lacrosse School University members, there's more content going into the strength and conditioning module in Lacrosse School University. So go check that out if you haven't already. But the idea is that when w- sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But the thing I want to talk about is that communication piece where you're learning how to bring people up around you and you're learning how to deal with people who maybe aren't as motivated as you, aren't as skilled. And when you're young, developing a little bit of that have fun experience and get everybody else around you, you might be getting your ass kicked. But if your goalie can develop that, like, kind of a more positive mindset, I'm like, hey, okay, listen, like we really need this to happen, but it's all good, like whatever. And you can laugh a little bit. That's a skill that I think will last your goalie a very, very long time when things start to get really, really serious. The winning component, when you play up, okay, when you do play up, well, then, when you're playing varsity, like the team wants to win. Like the school wants to win. They need to win. More kids win, the more kids come, the more teams win, more kids want to come to that school, depending. And then it just creates some like respect and some legacy. And that's really important. But sometimes for a goalie, you don't need that added work, right? So so there's not an easy answer here, but I will tell you that if your goalie gets the opportunity to play down, there's so many benefits. I couldn't cover them all here tonight, but the idea is like there's so many benefits. Okay. Uh, and what happens for a lot of goalies is they get like, so let's say you've got a really good goalie and they're varsity caliber, but the varsity has a couple other goalies and your goalie plays down. This in the last like 15 years, this happens more and more, but sometimes those varsity goalies, what ends up happening is if that varsity goalie is like a mean girl or not fun to be around, or the guy in the cage is like kind of a bit of a dud, they may quit. They just may quit, and that happens a lot. But I always tell my goalies this: like if you were a senior and you had played like 4 years lacrosse and you'd given all to your high school team, you would feel like you would deserve that position, right? And not that that's correct in a competitive mindset, but the idea is that if that were you, you'd probably want to be there. And so start the season out, see how it goes, be prepared to get the most out of JV as possible, but know that, if the varsity is losing and they know they have an asset down in the JV, that's things tend to work their way out. That happens to a lot of my goalies that are young and who are of that caliber, that teams just kind of open up for them. And then we kind of miss the benefits that I talked about playing on the JV, but it's a little bit of a different experience. And what that opens up is a young goalie on a varsity, the team just puts them under their wing. And that's a cool, that takes some coaching to kind of help make that happen. But the idea is that when a varsity team takes on like a JV aged goalie, sometimes they're undersized, they're a little short, but that team's got some big defensemen and they're like, okay, come on, let's go. We're going to win, and that's kind of cool to see too. Right. So that's, everything works out in the end. Like, everything works out in the end. But, I hope that helps. Rob Melky, that was a good comment. All right. Easton writes, would it be worth playing JV all season than getting pulled up to the playoffs? Yeah, sure. Yeah, because you're the only thing there, Easton, would be right pace of shot, maybe. Depending on the depth of your program. Like if your whole high school has 30 kids playing lacrosse, it might be a little weird. But yeah, like play JV, and then if you get pulled up, you'll have to take, a couple days of I would suggest getting a couple days of getting ripped on by some varsity players, but then yeah, that's fine. I like, there's just so many benefits to playing down. And part of it is just learning how to play and win and lose and get ugly and see better shots, especially for the boys. You're going to see usually a higher percentage of in close shots or some absolute cannons from outside. A lot of fast breaks, a lot of things like that, right? So keep that in mind. So that was fine. Yeah, that's totally fine. Okay. Just going back to a question that we had a little while ago. From Piper in the Pipes writes, how do you renew confidence after an injury like a pop to the thumb? Piper, that's a great question. So again, you've got to kind of take a big step back. You got to start out slow. But if it comes to a hand injury, you got to have confidence in your equipment. Like, you have to have confidence in your equipment moving forward. And so whether it's, different brand of glove, getting some plastic on it, whatever, you've just got to ease back into it and get to that point where you now feel confident again in front of the ball, right? And that's just a fact. But yeah, it's totally possible, man. Like, it's totally possible. It just you just got to have a plan, and then you just got to understand, kind of like I explained before, that what's going on in your head, like what's going on with the brain, right? Because and if you've got my lacrosse goalie, my cheat sheets, I've got this fun little like stick drawing in there. And as a goalie, when that ball leaves the stick, or slightly before it leaves the stick, we've got to see the ball, know where it's going, and then move in front of it. If we ever get any cloud of fear or doubt in there that delays our time to do all that, well, that ball is going to be closer to us, and we don't need that, right? So we want to be standing in front of that ball, understanding all of the possibilities, and being as courageous as possible, right? Because really, it's courage, not confidence, that you need there. But the idea then is like, okay, am I going to make this save? Like, so you just focus on the ball and moving as cleanly as possible in front of it. That's the goal. Okay. So that's a really, really good question. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and thanks for listening wherever you are. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you like this, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. When you're ready, head on over to lacrossegoalieuniversity.com/coaching so I can work with you and your goalie. And while you're at it, check out athletespecific.com to learn more about mental performance and high performance. You may not know this, but I work with athletes in a variety of sports. Lacrosse is my love, but man, I love athletes and the families who support them. So head on over to athletespecific.com, check it out. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.